Hey guys, okay, so we were talking about this team in the last video. I was telling you guys I'd go over the runes, I'd test a couple different things out with them, see how I feel about the safety of it. So far, this team has only failed once. I had a really good recording about 30 seconds ago, and then I realized that I didn't actually hit the start recording button, which was tragic. I had a run where everything went wrong in the RNG, and it still won, just to showcase like how safe this team can actually be. But let's go over the team. We'll talk about a lot of different things. First of all, we'll talk about why I use specific units, what the turn order is, and then we can talk about safety nets, and then we'll talk about the runes, and then the artifacts. So the reason I use this team, I think Ling Ling is by far the most consistent buff blocker. She has 2 skills that buff block, a defense break, and a strip. So her skill 3 is 4 random hits, with 1 always hitting the boss, the first one. And it can break attack speed, which is really helpful for the towers if it randoms them. And it's a 100% chance to buff block, so she can only get 15% resisted. She also has a 1-turn buff block on skill 2 that strips, which is pretty helpful. And she can get the defense break from skill 1 into the chance to use skill 2. So she has a lot of like potential buff blocks, especially with a team here with the team up mechanic stuff. All right, so Ling Ling is super strong, super consistent for this. I think she's the best. I think Cadiz is probably second best. Gina would be better if she didn't have only one. If she had more than 1 hit, she'd be really good. But my turn order here is going to be Ling Ling into Lauren, into the Raoq, the Crow, and the Fran. So the reason that I have the Fran last is because if you build your team with no immunity, except for maybe the Fran puts up the immunity last and then protects your team from the lightning bolt. Right, the Thunder Stun. Because they changed the Thunder so that it's no longer based on the number of beneficial effects the boss has, just a flat 25%. So she's kind of there as my like safety net. She's the safety net because she provides immunity. She's a safety net because she heals. She's also the safety net because the attack break saves you from the boss's damage and from the Thunderbolt damage. Other people will run things like Bird in place of the Lauren, but I am pretty sold on my Lauren. I like the attack bar push. I like the defense break for trash waves. I think it makes things a little bit faster. The Raoq team up mechanic is really great. The Crow, big damage with the dots on skill 1. And yeah, so with all that, I want to mention that the reason I think this team is incredible is because it's free to play. And I don't think you actually need any violent runes. And I also don't think that you need more than 1 will set. Now, that doesn't mean that violent runes are bad for this team. I think that violent runes are quite a bit better for this team. But the reason I say you don't need it is because I run my whole team on like random, like double will sets because of, you know, Punisher's Crypt and stuff like that. And since I put the Fran in, I actually don't really need the double will. It doesn't do a lot for me. If anything, the double will makes it harder for me because I have less stats, less damage. So like think about it this way. If I didn't run double will and I ran, let's say, Fatal, or I ran Swift, I'd have 40% more attack, or I'd have 25% more speed. Or if I ran 2 blade sets, I'd have 24% more crit. Right? So like when you look at my stats, don't be daunted and be like, oh my god, I need double will, I need 250 speed. Like, don't worry too much about that. Right? So my Ling Ling is pretty fast. She has 250 speed range. I think that this could very well be a Swift Ling Ling. Doesn't need that much. First of all, she doesn't need that much crit damage. She also doesn't need that much speed. The accuracy I make up by having 2 accuracies on my team, and also from artifacts, but that's kind of whatever. We don't have to talk about that right now. My Lauren is on a will fight accuracy set. She just needs to be slower than your buff blocker. You want the buff blocker to move first because then Lauren can strip if they miss, or if they hit it on a skill and, you know, it comes up after, etc. But yeah, generally Lauren's there for the strip and the pushback, slow debuff, etc. I like having my Raoq move in because I want the team up mechanic. Right, the team up mechanic resets the cooldowns of your buff blocker, which is important to have move before your Raoq, and also has the potential to pull more debuffs before the Crow moves for big scar. Right, Crow having the big scar damage. Obviously, this could be on Rage, this could be on Fatal, this could be on Swift. I could just find a lot more damage overall, right? And then, as I said before, having the Fran move last for the big heals. The important thing with the Fran, in my opinion, you don't actually need to stack nearly as much attack as I have. The attack is nice because you get more heal, but I think what's important is making sure your Fran and all of your units are actually tanky enough not to die if the RNG goes bad, right? That's how you build the safety net for your team. You don't really need insane amounts of damage to do this dungeon because Scar exists on Crow, and also because you have dots from Crow skill 1. So keep in mind, you don't need this much attack. you probably don't need this much HP or defense either. I thought I would just stack the extra stats because I'm running a slower build. So when I say like Violent is probably better, I think the units I would run on Violent here, I would run a Violent Ling Ling probably if I had the runes for it to make her a little bit faster. I would probably also run a Violent Lauren unless you want to go like Swift crit damage Lauren, which is also viable. I think Violent Raoq is really good for clearing the trash waves and making it faster, and I probably would not suggest running Violent on the Crow. I think I would just run stats. That's the give stat. So the last thing I want to talk about is artifacting for PvE content. A lot of people are confused on artifact substats, what's worth, what's not worth. I want to go over what I think is worth it for PvE teams specifically. So for PvE teams, I think the highest damage output is going to be coming from crit damage on your right side artifacts and then damage specific to element on your left side. However, I do think that a lot of people don't necessarily need to focus on big damage on both artifacts. I think it's very viable in your left side artifact to go minus damage from the element of the dungeon. So like I am pretty okay with having like, okay, these are all damage artifacts, but I think my Ling Ling has it. My Ling Ling has like minus damage from wind, but also damage dealt on wind, which helps her survive, right? It makes her a lot tankier. I think that a lot of people kind of overlook that damage reduction from a specific element is really good in dungeons because dungeons only have one element or like one element and a neutral element, right? They have the crystals. But for Still Fortress, I think that it's really strong here. I also think that on right side artifacts, accuracy is really good. Recovery can be really good if you're using a healer. Keep in mind that accuracy does apply to passives. So if you don't want to run as much accuracy on your Lauren, you can run a skill 3 accuracy artifact. If you want the defense break and the attack bar reduction chance to still be there with the higher accuracy. Additionally, the other substat lines that would be good if you're using an attack buff, using attack increasing effect is really strong. As well as, because I use team up mechanics, and this also applies with twins, attacking damage while attacking together is relevant. I know it's a lower roll, it's only 1 to 3%, but I've been using it on a lot of my artifacts. Maybe not this one, but I have a bunch of them that have like 6 to 9% depending on the units. Like my water twins, I believe, both have like 9% attacking together. So they actually do get quite a bit of extra damage, and I do think that that's worth it. Another thing on your damage dealers, you don't have to run attack artifacts. You can run HP defense artifacts, right? When I look at my Crow, I look at him and I say, okay, Crow's really low base HP. So running, if I need him tankier, running an HP artifact makes a lot of sense, right? Because it's a flat amount of stat that you gain and his base stats aren't as good. So percentage is less efficient on him, right? When I look at units like Fran, I'm like, okay, if I want my Fran to be tankier, then it makes sense to run a defense artifact, right? 10% defense on Fran is 46 defense. Whereas, like, if I use a defense right side artifact, 150 defense, that's 30% defense on an artifact, right? Whereas if I ran an HP one, it would only be like about just over 10%, right? So keep in mind that you can keep artifacts, like attack type artifacts that are HP or defense main are very viable in a lot of situations, as long as you know where you want to use them and as well as the substat rolls well. So don't be too discouraged by that. I know a lot of people are like, oh, I'm never going to use an attack type artifact with defense main. It's like, doesn't work that way. So keep that in mind. Don't worry too much about it. I will tell you though, artifacts make a big difference when you're trying to speed run. In terms of the safety of your run, it's helpful to just have a little bit of extra stat. It's not the, make or break for a lot of people, but when you're speed running, the extra damage output or the extra damage reduction and the min-max stats like accuracy or crit damage that you get from artifacts is super, super significant. So if you're trying to build, your 40-second teams, you're trying to build your 30-second artifact dungeons, you want to put good artifacts on your PvE units, and you want to make sure you're looking for very specific artifacts, ones you're never going to put anywhere else, right? It is worth it. Trust me. Trust me, it's worth it. So after the artifact dungeon dropped, my Alunia team, that was 99% with, I believe it was 4 fails and like 1,000 or 1,200 energy, something in that range. Oh, my Lauren just got deleted. Whoa. That's very uncommon. So like I was saying, after the artifact update came out, that team got worse and it became harder for me to actually clear the dungeon. The success rate went down to about 95%. I artifacted up my whole team with like increased damage by effects and also, damage dealt to water and damage reduced from water. They clear easy. They're faster than they were before and they clear at 100% right now. So keep in mind, artifacts are really good in PvE, guys. Yeah, we can do the run. You guys can see what I'm running here and kind of make your own judgments on it. But this team so far for me has only failed once. I've had 2 runs that are really slow. One of them was 150. The other one was 220. The 220 run probably should have been a loss, but Raoq kind of just went burr and just murdered the boss from like 30%. The faster runs for this are, the fastest I've seen, I think, is 38 seconds. The faster average time is like 41, 42. That's assuming I land buff block right at the beginning. The slower runs are about a minute. That's assuming I get buff block on the 2nd or 3rd rotation. And then the average, I guess, for that reason would be, you know, the 52, 53 range. But yeah, so here's the big buff block. See, the immunity goes up, so I can't be stunned. Attack buff goes up. I have a lot of potential, even with the push from the right side tower, and it's over, right? That's the fast team. Fast, safe, free to play. It is worth mentioning that my Raoq and my Crow are skilled. However, my Ling Ling is not skilled. Ling Ling being skilled would just mean lower cooldowns for skill 3 and for skill 2, which could be relevant. You know, a little bit more damage here and there, but overall, it's not bad. I think this is the best team that you can build out there right now. There are other speed team alternatives that I want to talk about in the future, but I don't quite have them ruined yet. I haven't figured out how to make them just right. It involves the usage of Pang, Ling Ling, and I believe Ergar. But I gotta make sure that the team works just the way I want it to before I make a video or start talking too much about that. People are always gonna ask alternatives to this team. I know this team's completely free to play, but as always, we'll have more alternatives to it, right? You can get Ling Ling from Fusion, Raoq is from Feimon, Crow is SD, Lauren is SD, and then Fran is from Ancient Coin Shop. So alternatives to this team, people are asking, you know, can I use a different buff blocker? Of course you can use a different buff blocker. You know, you can use anything you want. You can use a Chiwu, you can use a Pungbek, you can use Zinc, you can use anything you want. The reason I use the Ling Ling is because I think it's the most consistent for speed teams, right? You know, other people are going to ask, oh, can I use 2 Raoqs? Can I use blank? You can use pretty much anything you want because the Fran is the safety net. If you want to use double buff blocker, you can probably take out the Lauren for an Ergar. Gives you the attack lead for your team. It also gives you the vampire buff from the healing, and it makes killing the waves faster. I also think that Verd is an option instead of the Lauren. If you feel like you don't want the attack bar pushback, you'd rather the consistent attack bar gain, that works too. I personally don't use it because I think the defense buff is, or the defense break, sorry, is better for trash waves. It makes clearing faster. This exact team also works with double Raoq instead of the Crow. However, I would suggest making some of your units on Violent, not double Will like I did, because you still run into the same issue with one buff blocker. If you miss, it's really hard, right? If you miss buff block on the first turn, things become really hard because the chance to use the strip or to get the strip on your Ling Ling is not the highest. The thing I want to say about this team, though, is I want to stress again that I still don't like the game design of this dungeon. I still think it's terrible. The reliance of buff block is not fun in any situation, but I've kind of accepted that if I want to improve at the game, I have to force myself to farm this dungeon anyways because I need the artifacts for siege. But yeah, let me show you another variation of team. People were wondering about Fei. So I run my Fei slower than my team because I want her to get pulled in skill 1 into skill 2. So I don't think she's a very good buff blocker, so this run may just outright fail. And then I can also show you some runs with Ergar that I have ruined. I think if you use Fei, you have to use double buff blocker though. Like a team like this just doesn't work. It's not very safe or consistent. Also, my Fei is slower than my Fran. But I wasn't too concerned with her runes because I stopped running her. But people are asking, like, you know, how do I use Fei? I showed in my last video the double Fei teams. I think that even with single Fei, it's still not good enough. Just the chance to go skill 1 into skill 2, even with 2 Raoqs and a Crow, is just not that high and not that good. Plus, Fei's damage really isn't that good in PvE. You know, people are like, oh, she's got Seek Ignore defense damage. It's like, yeah, that works in PvP, maybe. Maybe that works in PvP because, you know, units don't have as much HP, but ignoring defense here is just not super relevant and not enough. So she did land the buff block on the first rotation, so that's not bad, but as you can see, it's going to be about the same run speed as the Ling Ling and probably not as relevant. Yeah, it's about the same run. So 45, it's between the 40 and the 50, and it's just like she had a 30% chance to pull skill 1 into skill 2 there, right? Whereas when you look at her AI, like if she has skill 3, theoretically and hopefully she'd use skill 3. If she doesn't, she uses skill 1 hopefully because, you know, no unit ever uses their skill 2 because comp to us why. I think if you're going to use a team like this, probably something like this would be a little bit better. Or maybe even drop the... You could probably drop the Fran here if you're doing this. You can go like Lauren. You can do all different variations of this team. There's tons of different options. Lots of different things you can do. I do think, however, if I use this team, it most definitely should not be Lauren moving before the Airgar. That is kind of a throw. Because then I'm forced to use my my Fei to strip, which is unlikely. But there's a lot of damage from this team just because the attack buff. I still stand by it, though. Best team is Lauren, Raoq, Ling, Crow, and Fran. Super, super safe team. The slower end teams were like the more free-to-play style units, you know, less will sets, less multiple violent sets and stuff like that. I think the average is probably about 110. 110 to 115. There's the strip. We did land it overall. Damage output. Gotta see if we can get a big scar here. Not quite. Yeah, it's still the same kind of thing. Oh, that's 4 hits into the boss. He never does that. Yeah, as you can see, RNG went well. Things went, you know, just right, and still 54 seconds. So not as good as the other team. Not quite there. Not quite there. Let me show you the last team that I ran. The team I was running for a while. Before I started using the Fran, I was running double Raoq. And where's my Ling here? I think this team, with the kind of more YOLO build, would work better if I had a skilled Ling, just because I feel like sometimes she's 1 turn off her skill 3 and it doesn't help. But I also feel like the issue would still be the same, right? It just comes down to like, will she use her skill? Is her AI going to be good and effective this time? Yes or no? The answer is usually no. Sad, but the answer is usually no. Here we go. She should have it up. She used skill 2. That's okay. The run should be pretty fast here with the team ups, actually. Decent scar. So this is why the double will is really effective, right? Because I get the second rotation before the boss can kill me. And then it's just over. Overall, not a bad team. But at the same time, I think that if the Fran team can get 40 seconds or 45 seconds, I don't see a reason why I wouldn't run something a little bit safer when that RNG was perfect. But yeah, let me know what you guys think of the team. Let me know what you guys think of units you've been trying, different teams. If you have suggestions for new stuff that I could run or test, I would be really grateful to hear your responses to that. So make sure to leave a comment below and ask me about those things. Last notes, not too much going on. If you guys are new to the channel, thank you for stopping by. We're close to 3K subs. I really appreciate that. I think I'm going to set a self goal this year for 10K subs. I think it'd be really cool if we get 10K subs by the end of December, end of 2020. Nice milestone to push towards so I can motivate myself to make more videos. Other notes I want to make. I'm doing some huge stream events this month, so if you haven't had a chance to stop by the stream, make sure to do that. My birthday is this Friday, September 11th. We're going to be doing like a big kind of sub-thon on the weekend. So hopefully you guys can stick around for that. Come hang out and get some gifted subs. Yeah, thank you guys so much for this. The next video will probably be talking about... It'll be less of a actual gameplay content video and more of a discussion video. In my last video, I talked about why I feel like PvE doesn't need resistance. I think I'm gonna talk about... This is a dangerous topic. I think I'm gonna talk about why PvP needs innate resistance and why PvP cannot have perfect AI. A lot of people always ask me like, oh, why can't I have perfect AI in Guild Wars? Or like, why can't we have like a violent proc limit in Guild Wars? I'll explain those in a couple videos, my perspective on it, and then you guys can let me know what you think, as always. So, thank you for being here. Thank you for engaging with me and the others, and I hope to see you guys soon. Peace.